All right, ready to dive into some English vocab.
Sounds good to me.
We'll be taking a deep dive into some fun expressions today.
Sure.
Idioms, slang, the stuff that can really make your English pop.
The stuff that can trip you up sometimes, too.
Yeah, for sure. But that's why we're here, right?
Exactly, to break it all down.
We've got a great lineup for you today. We'll be looking at ambiguity, come across, turn up, and on the fence.
Ooh, those are good ones. Lots of interesting nuances to unpack there.
Ambiguity is kind of a funny word.
How so?
Well, just the word itself, ambiguity. It almost sounds ambiguous.
Haha, yeah, you're right. It's like it's demonstrating its own definition.
So what does ambiguity actually mean?
Well, the dictionary definition of ambiguity is basically anything that's open to multiple interpretations. A word, a phrase, a statement. If you can understand it in more than one way, bam, you've got ambiguity.
So it's like those optical illusions where you can see two different images in the same picture.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Like, imagine the ending of the movie Inception.
Oh, I love that movie.
Was Cobb still in a dream? Or was he back in reality? We're left wondering, right?
Totally. That's what makes it so thought-provoking.
Exactly. And that's the power of ambiguity. It can be used intentionally in movies, literature, even in art, to make things more interesting and open to interpretation.
So it's not always a bad thing.
Definitely not. It depends on the context.
Now, I'm curious, where does the word ambiguity even come from?
Well, it actually comes from the Latin word ambigitas, which, no surprise here, means uncertainty or doubtfulness.
Wow, so the word itself has been carrying around that sense of mystery for centuries.
Pretty cool, right?
That makes me think, understanding the history of word, its etymology, could actually help us understand its meaning better.
It definitely can. It gives you a deeper understanding of the nuances of the word.
So how can we remember this word ambiguity? Any tips?
Sure. Think of it like this. You're trying to decide between two big routes. Ambi for two, right? But you're not sure which one to take. That feeling of uncertainty, that's ambiguity. Ambi for two and guys makes me think of routes, like a guide. Two big routes, unsure which one to take.
I like that. That's a good way to remember it. Two big routes, feeling uncertain, ambiguity.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of unexpected discoveries, that reminds me of our next phrase, come across. Have you ever stumbled upon something awesome when you least expected it?
Oh, all the time. It's the best feeling.
It's like finding a $20 bill in your pocket.
Exactly. Or like, imagine you're cleaning out your attic and suddenly you find a box full of old photos.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Totally unexpected, right? You weren't looking for them, but there they are. That's the essence of come across unexpectedly finding or encountering something.
It's like the universe is giving you a little gift.
I love that. And it perfectly captures the feeling of coming across something.
But hold on. Come across can also be used in different ways, right? Like if someone says he comes across as arrogant, they're not talking about bumping into him on the street.
Uh-huh. That's a good point. You're right. It can also describe the impression someone gives off, their personality or demeanor.
So it's not always a chance encounter. It can be about how we perceive people, too.
Precisely. It adds another layer to the meaning. Like if someone says, she came across as very confident in the interview, it means she projected an image of confidence.
Wow, so much packed into a simple phrase. Come across. That's all about context, huh?
It really is. Context is key.
So any tips on how to remember this one?
This one's pretty straightforward. Imagine walking along and boom, you come across something right in your path. You didn't expect it, but there it is, like crossing paths with something unexpectedly.
I like that. It's visual and easy to remember. Coming across something in your path.
Exactly, and that sense of surprise is key. Come across.
So what are some other words we could use instead of come across?
Well, you could say encounter, stumble upon, or discover. They all have that sense of finding something unexpectedly.
Ooh, I like those. They add a little more flavor to the language.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying find, we can say stumble upon.
Exactly. It's all about using language to paint a more vivid picture.
Speaking of vivid pictures, let's talk about turn up. That's our next phrase. And man, does this one have a lot of different meanings.
It really does. It can be about volume, showing up unexpectedly, even discovering something.
It's a real multitasker.
Haha, I like that. A linguistic multitasker.
Turn up always makes me think of this one time. I had lost my favorite scarf. I searched everywhere for it. And then, wouldn't you know it, it turned up in the laundry basket. Talk about an unexpected appearance.
Oh, that's a classic turn-up moment. It's like the scarf was playing hide and seek, and it finally decided to reveal itself.
It's funny because turn up could also mean something else in that same scenario, like I was so happy when my scarf turned up that I turned to the music and danced around the house.
Haha, yes, there it is, that dual meaning. First, it was about finding something, and now it's about increasing the volume.
It's like the phrase is adding its own little soundtrack to the moment.
Exactly, it's adding to the excitement.
Okay, so how do those two little words, turn and up, create all these different meanings?
Well, think about it. Turn usually implies a change in direction or state, right? And up often means an increase or an upward movement. So when you combine them, you get this idea of something either changing for the better, like the volume going up, or something being revealed, like your lost scarf reappearing.
It's like the words are doing a little dance together, creating these different meanings.
Haha, exactly. They're partners in crime.
So are there any other words we could use in place of turn up just to keep things interesting?
Definitely. If you're talking about volume, you could say increase, amplify, or even boost. And if you mean something appearing unexpectedly, you could say appear, arrive, or simply show up. It all depends on the specific nuance you want to convey.
So many options. It's
Yeah.
like having a whole toolkit of words to choose from.
I love that analogy, a toolkit for your vocabulary.
Now, any fun memory tricks for this one?
Yeah.
Something to help us remember all these different meanings?
Let's see. For the volume meaning, just picture yourself actually turning up a dial on a stereo. See that volume increasing?
Okay, that's a good one.
And for the appear meaning, maybe imagine a jack in the box. You never know when it's going to pop up, right? It just suddenly appears.
I love it. The Jack in the Box turning up unexpectedly. Those are great. I think I'll remember those.
Perfect.
All right, so we've tackled ambiguity, come across, and turn up. I think it's time to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the person who's on the fence.
Good one. On the fence. That's a classic.
It's such a common experience, right? That feeling of being undecided or neutral about something.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there. Like, imagine you're trying to choose between two vacation destinations, the mountains or the beach. That's a tough choice.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'd be on the fence for sure.
Exactly. Weighing the pros and cons, trying to decide which way to go. That's on the fence in a nutshell.
But where does that expression even come from? On the fence. It's such a strange image when you think about it.
It's interesting, right? It actually comes from the literal image of someone sitting on a fence, unable to decide which side to jump down on.
So they're literally stuck between two options.
Exactly. Their indecision is physically represented by their position on the fence. And I think that's what makes this idiom so powerful. It creates a vivid image in our minds.
It's like we can picture that person perched on the fence, deep in thought.
Exactly. It's language painting a picture.
You know, I've noticed that sometimes on the fence can have a slightly more strategic connotation.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
It's not always just about being indecisive. Sometimes it's a deliberate choice. Like you might be on the fence about something because you're waiting for more information.
Ah, that makes sense. It's a way of buying yourself time to make a more informed decision.
Exactly. It's not about being wishy-washy. It's about being thoughtful and strategic.
I like that perspective. It's a reminder that there's often more to these idioms than meets the eye.
It's like they have hidden depths.
I love that. Hidden depths of meaning.
Well, we've explored the ins and outs of these four phrases, but English is a vast ocean of idioms, slang, and expressions. I'm sure our listeners have come across a few head-scratchers in their time.
Oh, I'm positive. We all have those phrases that make us go, wait, what?
Exactly. So here's a little challenge for our listener.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think of one common phrase or idiom that has always puzzled you. Something you've heard, maybe in a song or a movie, or just in casual conversation.
Okay, got it.
Now do a little detective work. Research its origins, explore its different meanings and contexts, see if you can uncover any surprising insights.
I love this. It's like a linguistic treasure hunt.
Exactly. You might be amazed by what you find. And who knows, you might even become the resident idiom expert among your friends.
Ha, that's a great goal. Sharing the knowledge.
It's all about the journey, right?
Yeah.
Exploring the language and uncovering these hidden gems.
Absolutely. There's always something new to learn.
That's the beauty of language. It's a never-ending adventure.
Couldn't agree more. It's a journey of discovery.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to embark on your own linguistic adventures.
Happy exploring.
Keep those ears open, those minds curious, and those vocabularies expanding.
Until next time.
Until next time.
And that's what makes language so fascinating. Even simple phrases can have layers of meaning depending on the context.
Well, you've definitely sparked my curiosity. Now, tell me, what are some other ways we can use come across to add a little flair to our vocabulary.
Instead of simply saying find, you can use come across to add a touch of serendipity. Like instead of I found my old diary, you could say I came across my old diary tucked away in a box of childhood mementos. It adds a more evocative and engaging feel to your story.
That's a fantastic tip. It's all about choosing words that paint a vivid picture in the listener's mind.
Exactly. The words we choose can transform a simple statement into a captivating story. And sometimes the things we come across can really turn up the excitement in our lives.
Ooh, that's a smooth transition. And turn up is our next phrase. You know, it's amazing how one phrase can have so many different meanings.
It really is remarkable how turn up can be about increasing volume, showing up unexpectedly, or even discovering something. It's a linguistic chameleon.
It is. And it reminds me of a time when I lost my favorite scarf. I searched high and low for it, and just when I'd given up hope, it turned up at the bottom of my laundry basket. Talk about unexpected appearances.
That's a perfect example of turn up in the sense of something being found or discovered. It's as if the scarf decided to reveal itself at the most opportune moment.
Exactly. But you know, it's funny because in that same scenario, turn up can also mean something else entirely. Like, I was so relieved when my scarf turned up that I turned up the music and danced around the house.
Ugh, there's that dual meaning again. In the first instance, it's about finding something, and in the second, it's about increasing the volume. It's like the phrase itself is turning up the excitement in your story.
I never thought about it that way, but you're right. It's like the phrase is adding its own little soundtrack to the moment. But let's break it down for our listeners. How do the words turn and up work together to create these different meanings?
Well, turn usually implies a change in direction or state, and up often suggests an increase or upward movement. So when you combine them, you get this sense of something either changing for the better, like the volume increasing, or something being revealed, like your lost scarf reappearing.
So it's all about context and how the words play off each other. That's really interesting. Now, are there any other words we can use instead of turn up, just to mix things up a bit?
Of course, if you're talking about the volume, you could say increase, amplify, or boost. And if you're talking about something appearing unexpectedly, you could use appear, arrive, or show up. It all depends on the specific nuance you want to convey.
This is all so helpful. I'm already feeling more confident about using turn up in different ways. But before we move on, do you have any fun memory tricks for this one?
For the amplify, meaning picture yourself literally turning up the volume dial on a stereo. And for the appear, meaning imagine someone popping up unexpectedly, like a jack-in-the-box.
Those are great. I can definitely see those images sticking in my mind. Okay, so we've tackled ambiguity, come across, and turn up. I think it's time to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the person on the fence.
On the fence perfectly describes that feeling of being undecided or neutral about something. It's a common experience, wouldn't you say? We've all been there at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Like that time I was trying to decide between two vacation destinations, the mountains or the beach. I was on the fence for weeks, weighing the pros and cons of each option.
It sounds like a classic case of fence sitting. But you know, it's interesting to think about the origin of this idiom. It literally comes from the image of someone sitting on a fence, unable to choose which side to jump down on. It's as if their indecision is physically represented by their position on the fence.
That makes so much sense. It's not just a figure of speech, it's rooted in a real-life scenario.
Yeah.
And I think it highlights how language can be so visually evocative. We can almost picture that person perched on the fence, lost in contemplation.
Exactly. It's as if the language itself is painting a picture in our minds. And that's part of what makes idioms so powerful and memorable. They tap into our shared experiences and create these vivid mental images that help us understand and remember their meanings.
You know, it's amazing how much depth there is to these everyday phrases. Ambiguity, come across, turn up, on the fence. They're like little windows into how we think and experience the world.
I know, right? It's easy to just use them without thinking, but when you stop and really examine them,
It's like, whoa, there's a whole story behind each one.
and they're so versatile, they can add so much color and nuance to our conversations.
I feel like we've given our listeners a whole new set of tools to play with.
Absolutely. A linguistic toolbox ready to be used.
And speaking of tools, have you ever noticed how on the fence can sometimes be a tool in itself?
How so?
Well, it's not always just about being indecisive. Sometimes being on the fence can be a strategic move.
I see what you mean. Like you're intentionally delaying a decision, maybe because you need more information?
Exactly. It's not about being wishy-washy, it's about being calculated and thoughtful.
It's about choosing the right moment to make your move.
Precisely. And that just goes to show there are so many layers to these expressions.
It's like peeling back an onion, each layer revealing something new and interesting.
Ooh, I like that analogy. Layers of meaning just waiting to be discovered.
And that's what we've done today, isn't it? We've peeled back the layers of these 4 phrases, revealing their hidden depths.
We've explored their origins, their different meanings, even their visual imagery.
And hopefully we've inspired our listeners to do a little exploring of their own.
Yes, because English is full of these fascinating expressions just waiting to be unearthed.
It's a treasure trove of linguistic gems.
So to wrap things up, I have a little challenge for our listeners.
Ooh, I love a challenge. Lay it on me.
I want you to think of a common phrase or idiom that has always intrigued you. Something you've heard, but maybe never fully understood.
Okay, that's a good one. Something that's made you curious.
Exactly. And then do some digging. Research its origins, its different meanings, its cultural context. You might be surprised by what you uncover.
It's like being a linguistic detective, following the clues to unlock the secrets of the phrase.
I love that. A linguistic detective. And who knows, you might even uncover some interesting stories along the way.
That's the beauty of language. It's full of surprises.
Well said. So, until next time, happy exploring.
Keep those minds curious and those vocabularies growing.